What is going on, everyone? Tim from Tier Fallen Orbital. I'm going to do another space junk. Why not, right? 2 space junk videos in one day. Let's just get it. Let's get at it. Anyway, what's going on, everybody? So again, this is going to be a little bit more in-depth walkthrough on an install commission that I completed on a space junk Inquisitor themed hilt. I wanted to try to go over this particular install in a little bit more in-depth because a lot of people were asking what I ended up doing for this particular build. Okay, so this is an Inquisitor themed hilt. So it's technically, it's a staff, right? So it's a double-ended hilt. Installing on staffs is not always easy, okay? So you've got to think of it this way, right? So you've got 2 emitters on each end. Okay, so you've got 2 options. You either make your chassis so that it's an all-in-one piece. You've got your emitters inside of it, you've got your speakers inside of it, you've got 1 or 2 batteries in it, and it's just one fully modular piece. That way you can slide the whole chassis in, button it up, and you're good to go. Another solution that I have seen is a static chassis that lives in the hilt, and you'd like charge it externally or something like that. I actually recently did an Inquisitor themed staff or hilt from Space Junk Sabers. And in that case, it was easy because Nevin had built a sliding door on the external portion of the hilt. So that way, you know, getting the battery in and out is easy. It was easy for me to wire up emitters on each end because it wasn't removable. So with this particular one, it was a little bit, I had to engineer a different type of removable chassis for this, okay? So I want to talk about that first. We'll talk about the actual chassis, and then I'll go over the hilt and why I chose to go this route for this particular install. I like a challenge, so when I am told, I don't think you're going to be able to do this, what I hear is a challenge, right? So I like trying to engineer a solution. I do tend to say anything is possible. That has bitten me in the ass before, but for the most part, I like to at least try, right? So let's talk about the chassis first, then we'll talk about the hilt, and then I'll try and stick 2 blades in this without breaking anything, and we'll do a demo, right? So let's come into Fusion. So here is the chassis, okay? When we take a closer look at the hilt, you will understand why I needed to do the chassis this way. So we have so we've got PCBs on each end of the chassis. Those are what make a connection to the PCB emitters on each end of the hilt. I also have switches on one end, right? So this lower PCB is a 3-rail, or it's technically just a blade side PCB. That carries my 3 conductors up to that 1 emitter. On the other emitter side, I have 3 conductors. I've got my 3 switch legs, and then I've got my 3 legs for the PCB emitter on the upper end. So over here, I had to go with a 6-rail PCB, okay? That keeps it so that the chassis is removable. And once you screw in or you thread in, put the chassis in and thread in the emitter, everything makes a solid connection, okay? With this particular chassis, I did do a kicked profi board. This has been kicked at like a 20-degree angle, so it really, I mean, it can slide out of this tray, but it is kicked so that, actually, I think I have it here. Do I still have the profi board step file in here? I don't. So it's kicked at an angle such that you can still get at the SD card and the USB port without even sliding it out. I really like having the board kicked like that. I feel like it's just way more convenient. But I don't always do this. Okay, so that's where their profi board is. The battery tray is here. Okay, no room for a kill switch on this particular build. There is, I mean, you are the kill switch. Putting the battery in turns the hilt on. When you're not using it, the profi will go to sleep. There is a sleep function, but I always suggest if you're not going to be using the hilt for a long time, just take the battery out, right? So let's not forget about a speaker, right? So given that this is a double-ended chassis, you still need to have a speaker somewhere. So I created a speaker cap, okay, that slides over the bottom section of this chassis. In this area is a 22 millimeter speaker. That is from Smugglers Outpost. I kicked it off to the side, okay, to allow room for my other leads to come up. So again, I had three leads coming up to go to this PC, or yeah, to this PCB. And I also needed to bring my speaker and positive battery line back down through it. So having the 22 in there made that possible. This is the second time that I have put a 22 millimeter speaker in a hilt from Smugglers. I gotta say, I'm blown away at the sound that this speaker makes. I prefer 22 millimeter speakers to 24s now, just because it gives you the same, in my opinion, the same sound, but you've got way more room to work with, okay, as an installer. So I'll be using those a lot more, I feel like. So once I get that speaker wired up, I put this cap on, and then I wired up my PCB. We've got these holes here for speaker ventilation, and that's it, right? A little bit more complicated chassis build than I've done in the past, but I knew that I needed it to be removable, right? And we'll talk about why I needed to do that now. So let's come up top. Here's the hilt, okay? Really, really rad hilt. I mean, it's Nevin's stuff, so it's instantly recognizable to me as one of Nevin's builds. Rings do fold open and close. Both emitters are removable. Okay, so you unscrew one side and the other side unscrews as well. In each emitter, I have the male end of the PCB. So this is the 3-rail PCB for that one end, and the other end has got that 6-rail PCB. Okay. Oh, I did do custom blade plugs for this as well. So both unscrew. Now this one has got onboard switches. These are 2 brass momentary switches from Phil Ginnis at Kalymian Customs, and there's that upper 6-rail PCB. So let's go over how to use this guy, because it's a little bit different, obviously. Here's the chassis. Okay, I kept the chassis matte black on this one. I really like the way that this was blacked out. It goes in line with the hilt as well. So you want to take note of where your negative is. This is the spring side negative. Place your battery in the tray. So I didn't get an audible cue there for a second, so I was wondering if it was on. Some of the fonts don't have a boot sound. So, whoops. Once you get your battery in, this is how I have been using the hilt, right? I consider the section with the switches to be the upper section, okay? I unscrew the bottom section, emitter. Now, when you unscrew any of these emitters, these rings are going to be a little loose. Take note of that while you are putting the chassis in, because you don't want to pinch the chassis while you're sliding it into the hilt, right? The section where the switches are gets the 6-rail PCB, so the bigger end slides towards the switches. You can also take note of where the speaker is. Here's where the sound venting is on the hilt for the speaker. So you want to make sure the speaker's on this end, right? Slide the chassis all the way in, and then screw on that last emitter. Okay? Now you're ready to go. Let's come down to the bottom here. So that 22 millimeter sounds great. It sounds like a 24 to me. It really does. I mean, comparable, and you get way more space, right? Let's see what else we've got on here. So I did the client did have some requests for fonts, so I did end up putting those and writing them into the config as well. So let's put a blade in both ends. Let's see if we don't break anything, right? All right, so here we go. 1-inch blade holders. There are knurled brass thumb screws conveniently located on each end. Put your blade in. Tighten those thumb screws. You know what? Yeah, why not? Let's put both of them in. I was just going to keep one in, but why not, right? Running out of room. Okay, here we go. No room to swing. Sounds great. Really, really nice. Really, really nice. Let's take one blade out. Just easier to swing around. There we go. Nice. Nice hilt. I could play with this thing all day, and I don't typically like staffs. I don't. I'm sorry, I don't. They're just too big and unwieldy. So I did do custom blade plugs for this build as well. There those are. So I've included those with the hilt, and that's it, right? So I just wanted to go over a little bit more in-depth on this particular install because it was a little bit different, obviously, than my previous builds, right? So doing staffs, again, it's not always easy to figure out a solution. I prefer when the chassis is already designed for staffs, like Goth's got some really nice ones. Jimmy Saberjunk has some nice double staff chassis that are just like, I prefer when those are already designed. But given that this is a custom hilt, of course there's no chassis option, right? So anyhow, but then again, I do love a challenge, right? So anyhow, to the client, thank you very much for your patience and for trusting me with this build. To the viewers, thank you everybody for watching and the support. And with that being said, may the force be with you always. Have a good one, everybody.